Greetings, my friends. I hope this message finds you alive and well. My name is Melusi. I'm a certified life coach and a relationship coach. Today, I want to talk to you and let's have a discussion about 7 things that can destroy a marriage between a husband and a wife. You see, they are bad habits, they are harmful behaviors, and they are poor choices that have one thing in common. And that is, they result in an unhappy relationship that is characterized by stress, by disappointment, by frustration, and sometimes bad reactions that can include divorce. And so today, this topic is very important, and it is very critical to help you and your spouse to make changes before lasting damage happens to your relationship. The last thing you want is to lose your marriage. Even if you have been affected by some of the things I'm going to mention today, I will ask that you reflect on them and you prayerfully look at how you could still regain functionality of your broken and dysfunctional or marriage that's being destroyed. You may have heard this cliche which says the biggest problem in marriage revolves around money and sex. But these aren't the only areas that can make or break a relationship such as marriage. A host of unhealthy dynamics, unhealthy behaviors, and even poor priorities can mean the difference between thriving and failing. In extensive research that's been done on marriage, I quote particularly John Gottman, a doctor of clinical psychology and a researcher who has actually identified 4 harbingers of unhappy marriages. He calls them the 4 horsemen. These are behaviors that are displayed in relationship dynamics that are proven to be damaging over time. These include issues like criticism, contempt, stonewalling, and defensiveness. I'm going to explain a little bit of these as we go. To maintain healthy and happy romantic relationships, it's important to spot and to root out the common problems that can lead to discourse or even divorce. In one way or another, many of the things that destroy our marriages are actually rooted in the so-called 4 horsemen that the researcher talks about. But there are others that go beyond this rubric. Little everyday conflicts that add up to marital strife and sometimes even divorce can rear its ugly head. Here's a look at 7 most common behaviors that can destroy a marriage. Now, I'm going to just cover 7 of them. And I want to say you can change these and thereby restore your relationship. Number 1, you communicate poorly or not at all. This is the first problem. Now, no one will be surprised to learn that poor communication actually degrades relationships. If one or both of the members of a couple feel unheard, they feel put down or shut out, it's difficult, if not impossible, to build the connection again. And so unhealthy communication has many faces within marriage. In some cases, it might look like an inability to talk with your spouse about how you really feel inside. This can eventually lead to volatile emotions. Without being able to express these feelings on a regular basis and get feedback on them, small issues can turn into suppressed, bottled up emotions that boil over into explosive conflict when you least expect it, because you've been suppressing it. And like a spring, when it's released, it will spring forth and can destroy what seemingly looked like a good relationship. And so, friends, poor communication, I want you to know also that it can look like not fighting fair. When things get heated up, spouses often start conversations very harshly. They stonewall each other and tend to passive aggressiveness. Each one does not even want to talk to the others, just hi, how are you, morning, yeah. There's no real communication on a deeper level. And you don't have to be a master of communication to rectify this problem. A handful of skills can be learned to take you from screaming or stonewalling to speaking calmly and productively. I recommend that as a couple, you start finding something that you can empathize and validate in your partner. In other words, try to see things from their perspective. Perhaps you can understand how they are hurting and why they are angry or frustrated by a situation. Even if you wouldn't be able to say anything, just listening to them would actually have a lot of impact on your relationship. And so it's important for you in your marriage to feel heard. And if you're not heard, to let your spouse know that I feel I'm not being heard. Additionally, be sure that you are really listening to your partner, not just waiting to respond back. I call this active listening, where you can actually just sit back and listen to your partner without having to answer back, but actually make sure they feel heard. That is very important. If the conversation is too intense for you and your spouse, and to keep the respect for each other, I often recommend that take a short break in the conversation. Take time out, all right? So that everyone can remain physiologically calm and not speak with a lot of emotion, all right? And to ensure that a long and happy marriage is maintained, it is important to communicate well and to stay interested and to avoid disconnection and apathy. I'll talk a little bit more about apathy later on. And so let me talk to number 2 of the 7 points I want to talk about. Number 2 is don't let outsiders gain too much influence on your marriage. When you do that, my friends, you are creating trouble. Because a healthy marriage, of course, yes, it needs the support of relatives and friends. But some external relationships can actually become too involved and exert what I call an undue influence. This could be from a parent, a friend, or even a child, your sibling. They can hold an inappropriate power and sway over your marriage and move it in directions that can leave one of you very uncomfortable. And so when a third party becomes too involved in a couple's decision-making process, this, without even doubting it, can lead to conflicts and decisions that may not align with the couple's values and their priorities. And that's why it's important to maintain what I call boundaries, okay? And so we know in relationships that the presence of a third party definitely erodes trust. If one partner feels like their opinions or their preferences are consistently overridden and neglected, they may lose trust in their spouse's commitment. And they may not even be committed to that relationships. They may even lose trust. And so to protect your marriage from too much outside third-party influence, I often recommend to couples that I counsel that they must consider setting a boundary. You know, even the Bible says, hitherto shall thou come, but no further. That's talking to the sea. There's a boundary. When the sea overflows, there's trouble in the land. So this is a very key step, and perhaps the first one that you should have to really discuss openly and honestly what you need to see happening. Discuss how you both feel about the involvement of that third party, and also what boundaries you would like to see established. It's a mutual discussion. No one is getting any advantage over the other. And clearly define what roles and boundaries you want to set with respect to the third parties. And once you have agreed, you and your partner, then communicate to the influencer, if I can put that word, or the third party person, that your marriage is really a two-person relationship and that there's no room for the third person. And that you may need to calmly and humbly explain that while you value their input and their closeness to your marriage, the ultimate decisions regarding this relationship should really be between you and your spouse, and that they should not come in between. That's stating your boundary. Let me move on to point number 3. You don't ask or seek for help for addictive behaviors. That's number 3. addictive behaviors in a relationship. And addiction can show up in unexpected ways. Besides the well-known culprits such as drugs and alcohol, and activities such as social media or working can be an addiction, shopping, gambling, or gaming. These can all be addictive behaviors you're dealing with in your marriage that can actually weaken and destroy your marriage. Whatever the source of the addiction, it can drive a serious wedge between you and your spouse. You see, my friends, when someone is struggling with an addiction, their priorities often shift away from their relationship or from their partner or the loved ones. They no longer prioritize them because the substance or the behavior of addiction becomes a central focus, which then leaves less time and emotional energy to invest in the relationship. And so the people who are actually involved in these addictive behaviors may also develop secretive behaviors where they want to practice their habits in secrets. Okay? And so they end up isolating themselves from the spouse because of shame or just being embarrassed to be known to be doing that behavior. So you need to identify if perhaps your relationship is dealing with an addiction. All right? Does your relationship have that problem? And that's the first step towards perhaps resolving it and healing the relationship. Because once you have come clean to yourself and to your spouse about what has a hold on you, I often encourage couples, even individuals, to then go ahead and seek therapy for that problem. A trained therapist can help you and your spouse to navigate that difficult recovery stage, which is very emotional, all right? Because it might include putting limits on the addictive behaviors and the consequences for violating certain behaviors or boundaries, all right? It might involve you being mindful of what you do and where you do it. And you have to exercise that control or how you engage in those hobbies, all right? Point number 4 is you withhold sex or physical attraction from your partner. That's a recipe for disaster. Because a study has established, and you can read this in the Archives for Sexual Behavior, which is a study they did which found out that a satisfying sex life and a warm interpersonal climate is actually associated with marital satisfaction. And very similarly, there's research also that was published this year that revealed that affectionate touch was robustly related to the degree of love reported between partners. The love and the touch was associated. And so sex and physical intimacy are, after all, what distinguishes marriage from any other relationship, okay? Because of that intimacy that the couple has to share physically and also emotionally. So what happens to marriage when sex and affection goes out of the window? What actually happens? One of the things that actually happens first is that there's a feeling of disconnection that develops. And some studies have actually shown that lower sexual satisfaction is actually linked to increased marital problems. It's the springboard for many other problems to start coming in. And so, of course, others say there are a lot of other factors that can create a desire for discrepancy and sexual frequency. But the point is that when the frequency ebbs down and the flow of life slows down, it also affects your quality of relationship with your spouse. And so there are many things, of course, that come in. Some have said child rearing or parenting is a huge challenge for physical intimacy. So the affection is transferred to the children. It also says stress is one of the biggest causes for a low ebb or a reduction in the fervency to want to be physically affectionate. Sometimes it's physical health. If you have a splitting headache and someone says, come give me a hug and kiss me, it might not happen because the priority at that point is the physical health or the sickness that they have. And so a season of less sex in the marriage can be quite normal for the reasons stated above. But I want you to know that an unsatisfying sex love, if it's prolonged, can create a wedge in a relationship, which can result in many other things happening. However, just because there's that struggle in this area, as a coach, I always advise people that it doesn't necessarily mean your relationship is doomed and it's dead. Okay? If you are intentionally withholding sex from your partner, yes, that could be a harbinger, an indicator for some serious underlying issues that are eroding your relationship or your confidence in your relationship. Because when sex is treated as an emotional product, a transaction in a relationship, then you need to know that there are bigger issues you and your spouse need to sit down and talk about. Because your sexual intimacy is affected by other things that are coming into the play. Also, sometimes as a couple, you may have past traumas that are inhibiting your ability to fully participate in sexual intimacy. On a deeper level, you might realize that you were hurt while you were growing up. You were raped. In such a case, you need to rekindle your physical connection and identify exactly the why behind this lack of intimacy, because this will destroy your marriage if it's not addressed. You need to move towards reconnecting physically with your spouse. All right, let's move on to point number 5 of the 7 things that can destroy a marriage. So point number 5 says you may not be on the same page about money. You see, it's okay for you and your partner to have different ideas about money, but being on totally opposite heels or different pages, opposite pages about finances can put a serious strain on your relationship. Because every day, life is about making numerous, I'll call them innumerable decisions about money. So despite your different philosophies and views about money, you need to agree on what and how to use your money. Though it's normal and even healthier for couples to have what I call strong, they might have their own decisions and have strong-worded conflict discussions about money. For you to actually have a healthy marriage relationship, you need to have a way of managing that conflict about how money is used. On this area, I often recommend that you clearly communicate your expectations. Couples need to discuss the value and the meaning of money in their lives and what it symbolizes for them. Couples almost always differ in terms of their weekly priorities and spending habits, and can disagree even in a fair way about who gets to spend what and when. But as long as you're striving towards understanding each other and working towards a compromise, what is important is that you must manage your disagreements about finances, and you don't have to be driven apart by those differences. Point number 6, as we move on, is that you let apathy creep into your relationship, or you just fall into the rut and you let things be, laissez-faire attitude. As innocuous as apathy might be and might sound like, feelings of apathy can be as damaging in marriage as red hot temper, wrath. Yeah. A study was done actually by the Journal of Sex and Marital Therapy, and they found that indifference between a romantic partner was actually the primary reason couples sought for therapy. Indifference. And so apathy can creep in, and when you and your spouse neglect to spend time together, you don't share any common interests, you simply fall into the rut, you can actually create problems by that attitude. So while stability is essential and you want to have a routine, this can lead to monotony and disinterest. To say it's not interesting anymore is very boring. You know how kids even say, I'm bored. All right. But there are also external stressors that can cause this. Overworking, financial issues, or family problems that are diverting your attention from each other. These can move you away from your marriage. And therefore, if you keep them unresolved, such conflict can develop into resentment and can eventually create emotional distance. And so, I often recommend in my coaching sessions that if you don't feel supported or validated, you will withdraw, whether you like it or not, from that relationship. And so to keep your marriage spark going, it is important to counteract apathy with a bit of excitement. Be always an exciting couple. Try to surprise each other. Do small gestures, small gifts, small surprises. It helps to focus on things that perhaps you like in common and do them together. It could even be just eating a meal together and seeing who's overeating. Okay? Create common goals for each other. Okay? Projects you can do and work on together, and collaborate on some shared objectives about your careers, about your finances, about your relationships, or even exercising, things that can help you bond together. And of course, regularly keep the communication open about your feelings, your needs, your desires, and keep the connection strong by communicating even by SMS, by phone calls, by emails, etc. Last but not least, number 7, you don't seek couples therapy or coaching when you need it. You think your problems are going to go away by themselves, and yet they're built. You see, we do not take cars to service because they have a problem. We take them there just to maintain them in top-notch functionality. So whether your marriage is in dire straits, or you could just use some fine-tuning, or it's just a service, okay? There's no shame in seeking help from a therapist. You do it because you want your mental health to be in good shape and your marriage to be working. Research actually shows that couples who go for regular counseling, I think this was published in a journal, the Journal of Marital and Family Therapy, that couples who actually participated in emotionally focused couples therapy, on average, enjoyed the experience of their relationship for up to 24 months. These improvements were still there after 24 months. And therefore, why would you not go for therapy, my friends, to keep your marriage exciting and happening, okay? And so I often recommend that attend therapy, okay? It could help improve your marriage. It's definitely one thing you must consider for you and your spouse. It could also unearth some individual issues that you were not aware they are happening to your spouse, because they are also growing and you're growing. You're not always the same 18-year-olds. Okay, granted, therapy isn't often cheap, as you say. I'm sure you're saying, Melusi, it's expensive. But my friends, what shall you exchange for your happiness? Perhaps you have medical cover that includes counseling and therapy. Use it. You may have access to a psychologist once a year. You might even have at your place of worship a dedicated mental health person or a mental health non-profit organization in your neighborhood. Look into your network and see what's available, even online. You could find a therapist who's close to where you are to get your marriage refreshed. It's a pit stop you need, my friends, not because there's a breakdown, but you want to optimize your traction in your marriage. So, as I close, let me reiterate the 7 things that can destroy your marriage. You must deal with these, otherwise in the long term, your marriage will be affected. We say it from the beginning. Number 1, communicate. Because poor communication or no communication at all will destroy your marriage. My marriage officer told me that from the beginning. Secondly, he said, be careful of your in-laws and your outlaws. Don't let outsiders gain too much influence in your marriage. It will destroy you, because 2 are 1. Don't get a second person to divide you. Number 3, we say, you don't seek for help when you see addictive behavior. You think it's going to go away. No, you need to seek help. Number 4, we said you withhold sex or physical attraction from your partner, and that just distances each other from you. And number 5, we said you fight over use of money. Number 6, we said you let apathy creep in and you just fall into a rut and you think things will just sort themselves as they go. No, seek for help. And that's what we ended with on number 7, that you must seek for couples therapy. You must seek for coaching. Go for help. You need it. And so, my friends, I hope this has been a blessing to you. May the Lord bless you. If you need any help, you need any coaching, my contacts are right there below. Get in touch with me. Let me see how I can also support you. God bless you, and see you on the next time.